The Meredith Kercher murder case, which took place in the Italian city of Perugia in 2007, is one of the most controversial and discussed cases in modern criminal history. The case not only attracts attention with the shocking details of a brutal crime, but also raises questions about justice, prejudice, media ethics, and the international legal system. At the center of this case are the American exchange student Amanda Knox and her then-boyfriend Rafael Salcedo, both of whom were initially arrested as suspects and later convicted. But the convictions were met with massive criticism and led to lengthy appeals that attracted the world's attention. Meredith Kercher was born on December 28, 1985 in South London. She was the daughter of a British couple, John and Arlene Kercher, and grew up in a loving family with her siblings. Meredith was a talented and ambitious student who studied at the University of Leeds, where she focused on politics and international relations. Her dream was to live and work abroad after graduation, and she took the opportunity to participate in an exchange program in Italy to improve her language skills and experience new cultures. Meredith's decision to move to Perugia was marked by a longing to gain new experiences. She was an outgoing and friendly person who quickly made friends and settled into the international community of students. Amanda Knox was born on July 9, 1987, in Seattle, Washington. She grew up in a family that valued education and creativity. Amanda was an intelligent and curious student who became interested in literature and writing at an early age. In 2006, she decided to participate in an exchange program in Italy to improve her Italian language skills and get to know the culture better. Rafael Salcedo, born March 26, 1984 in Giovanni, Italy, was a computer science student at the University of Perugia. He was known as a sensitive and intelligent young man who was passionate about technology and computers. Rafael was attracted to Amanda, and the two met during Amanda's stay in Italy. Their relationship developed quickly, and they became a couple, which later led to speculation about their possible role in the Kercher murder case. Meredith was in Italy to participate in an exchange program and studied at the University of Perugia. At the time, she was living in a shared apartment with Amanda Knox, who was also an exchange student. The two women had met through a mutual friend and decided to live together. On the evening of November 1, 2007, Meredith spent time with friends and made her way home at around 8:55 p.m. The following day, November 2nd, Rafael Salcedo, Amanda Knox's boyfriend, discovered traces of a possible burglary in the apartment they shared, as well as bloodstains in the bathroom. Together, he and Amanda alerted the police. Even before the Carabinieri arrived, officers from the Postal and Telecommunications Police appeared in front of the house, as they were examining two mobile phones found near another house, both belonging to Meredith. Although the officers initially refused to break open a locked door that leads to Meredith's room, one of the roommate's friends stepped in. There they found Meredith's lifeless body on the floor under a covers. According to the second forensic medical report, she died between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. as a result of stab wounds to the neck and suffocation. The sight of her lifeless body was a shock to her roommates and the community in Perugia. The room where Meredith was found was devastated, indicating a violent fight. These horrific circumstances made it clear that this was a brutal crime and led to an intensive investigation into what happened. The police immediately cordoned off the crime scene, and the investigation began. The first investigations focused on the search for evidence and witnesses. Police questioned Amanda and Meredith's roommates to find out if they had noticed anything suspicious. The questioning was intense and often confrontational. Amanda, for example, was asked why she didn't go to the police immediately when she saw the signs of burglary. Her emotional reactions were considered suspicious, and she seemed nervous and frightened in the first hours after the crime. The investigators also noticed that there were contradictions in Amanda's statements. Her statements about the time of her arrival at the apartment and the circumstances under which she learned of Meredith's death were not clear. This led to speculation about Amanda's possible involvement in the crime. Raphael, who was with Amanda, was also involved in the investigation. Police believe that the two may have known more about the crime than they admitted. On November 6, 2007, Amanda Knox and Raphael Solicito were arrested on suspicion of murder. Investigators suspected that they were involved in the murder of Meredith Kercher. This decision led to a wave of media coverage marked by sensationalism and prejudice. Amanda Knox quickly became the focus of attention and was considered by many to be the prime suspect. Their emotional reactions, which fluctuated between fear and confusion, were perceived as inappropriate. As a result, she was often perceived as guilty by the police and the public, even before all the evidence had been investigated. The media reinforced this image by portraying Amanda as an obscure and enigmatic figure who may have played a role in the crime. A particularly critical phase in the investigation was the nightly interrogation of Amanda Knox, which took place under questionable circumstances. Amanda spoke only rudimentary Italian and was interrogated intensively by several Italian police officers for many hours. During this long interrogation, neither a lawyer nor an interpreter was present, which was later criticized as a violation of basic rights. Under the enormous pressure of this interrogation, Amanda incriminated the Congolese Dia Patrick Lumumba, the owner of the bar where she worked. She stated that Lumumba had been with her on the night of the murder and had attacked Meredith. On the basis of this statement, Lumumba was immediately arrested. The following day, however, Amanda revised her testimony and submitted a handwritten, 4-page statement retracting her accusations against Lumumba. She stated that she could no longer clearly remember the events of the night of the murder and that her earlier testimony had been made under the enormous pressure of the interrogation. A central aspect of the investigation was also DNA analysis. The prosecutor's office claimed that DNA traces of Amanda and Raphael were found at the crime scene. These traces were considered incriminating, but the defense pointed out that the forensic methods did not meet scientific standards. The forensic investigators took DNA samples from various surfaces in the apartment. The prosecution argued that Amanda's DNA was found on a knife that was allegedly the murder tool. However, the defense questioned the credibility of this evidence, claiming that the DNA samples were uncertain and unreliable. Experts in DNA analysis concluded that the samples had not been secured according to the prescribed procedures, and that the results may not have been correct. In the midst of this ambiguity, Rudy Herman Gide came into play, a 20-year-old drug dealer from Abidjan, Ivory Coast, who became the focus of the investigation as the main suspect. Gide's bloody fingerprints and DNA samples proved his presence at the crime scene. In addition, his sperm was found in the body of Meredith Kercher, further cementing his connection to the crime. Gide initially confessed to the crime, but later changed his testimony and accused Amanda Knox and Raphael Salcido of being involved in the murder. After the crime, Gide fled to Germany by train. During his escape, he communicated with an English journalist via Facebook, revealing information about the murder, drawing attention to his possible involvement. The German authorities intervened, and Gide was arrested by the police in Mainz on November 20, 2007. He was extradited to Italy, where the investigation against him continued. In the course of the trial, Gide was sentenced to 30 years in prison on October 28, 2008 in a separate trial for rape and murder. On December 22, 2009, his sentence was reduced to 16 years imprisonment in the second instance, taking into account mitigating circumstances. In 2009, the trial of Amanda Knox and Raphael Salcido began. The prosecution presented its arguments and presented the evidence collected. The prosecution claimed that Amanda and Raphael had acted in a drug binge and that they had murdered Meredith Kercher together. The defense rejected these claims, arguing that the evidence was insufficient to warrant a conviction. The first days of the trial were marked by emotional statements. Amanda's family was present and expressed their support for the accused. Amanda herself gave numerous interviews during the trial and emphasized her innocence. She spoke openly about the difficulties she faced and the impact the allegations had on her life. In the course of the trial, various experts were interviewed to check the credibility of the evidence. The defense brought forward forensic experts who questioned the method of DNA analysis and the way the evidence was secured. These experts argued that the procedures did not meet scientific standards and that the results were therefore not reliable. The prosecution, on the other hand, brought forward its own experts who supported the evidence and questioned the innocence of Amanda and Raphael. The experts became central figures in the trial. On December 4, 2009, the verdict was announced. Amanda Knox and Raphael Salcido were found guilty of the murder of Meredith Kercher. Amanda was sentenced to 26 years in prison. Raphael received a prison sentence of 25 years. The verdict triggered horror and outrage worldwide. Many people were convinced of Amanda's innocence, and saw the court's decision as the result of a flawed justice system. The conviction led to a wave of protests, both in Italy and internationally. Supporters of Amanda and Raphael organized demonstrations and called for a review of the case. Pressure on the Italian judiciary and public opinion increased, with many calling for a reassessment of the evidence and procedures. After the conviction, Amanda and Raphael began the appeal process. The defense filed a variety of documents and evidence to prove the innocence of the two defendants. A central point of the appeal was the questioning of the DNA evidence and the claim that the original investigations had been flawed. The defense also sought to introduce new witnesses and experts to the trial to establish the innocence of Amanda and Raphael. The appeal process was accompanied by intense emotional debates and a detailed review of the evidence. As part of the appeal, new evidence was presented, including independent expert opinions and expert testimony confirming the unreliability of the forensic evidence. These new findings led the judges to reassess the evidence and the previous verdicts. The appointment negotiations were marked by profound questions about justice and the role of the media. Amanda's psychological profile was re-examined, and the defense argued that the public perception of Amanda and sensationalist coverage had a decisive influence on the original verdict. On October 3, 2011, the Court of Appeal in Perugia overturned the convictions against Raphael Solicito and Amanda Knox for murder. Both were acquitted on the ground, per non aver commesso il fatto, for not committing the crime. This decision was the result of intense legal battles and a thorough review of the evidence. Two scientists from La Sapienza University almost completely invalidated the main pieces of evidence in the prosecution, which contributed decisively to the acquittal. In addition, Amanda Knox was sentenced to 3 years in prison for defamation, which she had already served. This sentence related to her false accusation of Lumumba. Rudy Guede, the only person still convicted in the case, also requested a retrial. His defense attorneys argued that the case had to be reopened after the acquittal of Knox and Solicito. However, Guede's attempt to appeal his conviction was unsuccessful. On March 26, 2013, the Court of Cassation in Rome announced that the case of Amanda Knox and Raphael Solicito had to be reopened due to procedural errors found. This verdict was welcomed by the prosecution, as well as the lawyers of Meredith Kercher's parents, who hoped for the possibility of restoring justice for the murder victim. In contrast, Knox and Solicito's lawyers were dismayed by this development, as they maintained the innocence of their clients. The new trial began on September 30, 2013 in Florence, which opened another chapter in an already long and emotionally charged case. On January 30, 2014, the fourth verdict of the court was handed down in the absence of the defendants. In it, Knox and Solicito were again found guilty of the murder of Meredith Kercher. Amanda Knox received a prison sentence of 28 years and 6 months, while Raphael Solicito was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The reasons for the verdict were published in April 2014, in which the court referred to the alleged evidence and circumstantial evidence that led to the new conviction. This decision led to a further outcry in the media and the public, as it reignited the already tense debate about the guilt or innocence of the two defendants. Knox and Salcido's lawyers appealed the verdict in June 2014, arguing that the evidence was insufficient to uphold the previous convictions. As a result, the case was brought back to the Italian Supreme Court. In a turning point in the proceedings, the Supreme Court finally acquitted Amanda Knox and Rafael Salcido of the murder charge on March 27, 2015. The court found that there was not enough evidence to justify the previous convictions. This decision was received with relief and joy worldwide, especially in the United States, where many people had fought for the innocence of Amanda Knox. However, Knox's return home was accompanied by a mixture of joy and skepticism. While many people rejoiced with her and celebrated her return, others were skeptical about the circumstances of her acquittal and questioned the effectiveness of the Italian justice system. In a further step, Amanda Knox received compensation of €18,000 from the Italian state on January 23, 2019. This decision was taken because she had been refused the assistance of a lawyer and interpreter during a nightly interrogation. The European Court of Human Rights reprimanded the conviction for defamation as a violation of the right to a fair trial and also found a violation of the prohibition of torture, as the Italian judiciary had ignored Knox's complaints about the behavior of the police officers. Rudy Guede, the only one still convicted in the case, was initially sentenced to 30 years in prison, which was later reduced to 16 years. From December 2020, Guede was allowed to leave prison during the day, and on November 26, 2021, he was released early after 14 years in prison for good behavior. He had started studying history and, according to a judge, showed impeccable behavior as well as a high degree of social integration. However, Guede was confronted with new allegations after his release. Since 2021, he has been under investigation for alleged physical and sexual abuse of his ex-girlfriend. As a result, he has to wear an electronic ankle bracelet while the investigation against him continues. In addition, Amanda Knox was convicted of defamation of Dia Lumumba in 2024, but she did not have to be arrested. This was another indication of the complexity and ongoing consequences of this highly controversial case. The psychological impact of the case on Amanda Knox and Rafael Salcido is difficult to overestimate. Both have been exposed to the public for years and have had to deal with the stigma and pressure that came with the murder allegations. In later interviews, Amanda reported on the emotional and psychological stress she had gone through. The imprisonment in a foreign prison, the public condemnation, and the constant surveillance by the media left deep wounds. Amanda struggled with anxiety, depression, and a persistent sense of isolation and alienation. Rafael, who received less public attention compared to Amanda, also suffered from the psychological consequences of the conviction and subsequent media coverage. The impact of the case was also enormous for Amanda and Raphael's families. Amanda's family often traveled to Italy to support her, while also having to deal with constant media coverage and rumors. The psychological stress they suffered from the situation led to a deep sense of powerlessness and grief. Family members were often trapped in the role of supporters, but also had to deal with their own emotions and grief over Meredith Kercher's lost life. These complex feelings led to tensions and conflicts within the families and in the public. The case of Meredith Kercher raised important questions about prejudice and stereotypes, especially in relation to gender, nationality, and cultural differences. Amanda Knox was often portrayed as a bad girl, while Raphael was less criticized. Media coverage helped to promote an image of gender that often pushes women into a role with negative connotations. The case has also sparked the discussion about international legal systems and the challenges posed by different legal cultures. As an American citizen, Amanda Knox was trapped in an Italian justice system that differed in many aspects from what she was used to in her home country. The complexity of the case highlights the importance of protecting the rights of defendants and ensuring that trials are fair and transparent. It also highlights the need for dialogue between different legal systems to promote better understanding and respectful cooperation. After her final release, Amanda Knox returned to the United States. Her return was followed with great attention by the public. She was able to start a new life, but the experiences of the past years left their mark. Amanda spoke candidly in interviews about her experiences, the challenges, and the psychological impact the crime and subsequent legal battles had on her. Amanda was also actively involved in the issue of injustice in the justice system, appearing on several talk shows and public events. Their goal was to raise awareness of the problems in the legal system and to encourage others who had had similar experiences. Raphael Salcedo also found a way to reshape his life after the trial. He moved close to his family and tried to withdraw from public life. Unlike Amanda, Raphael remained largely in the background, but did not avoid public discussion of the events that had changed his life forever. However, Raphael published a book in which he described his view of the events and his experiences during the trial. His narrative reflected the pain and confusion he experienced during his years in prison and subsequent trials. The Meredith Kercher murder case is a complex web of suspicions, prejudices, and questions about justice. The case has shaped both the Italian and international communities, shedding light on the challenges facing the judicial system. The conviction and subsequent appeals of Amanda Knox and Raphael Salcedo raise fundamental questions about the trials and treatment of suspects. Media coverage of the case, the role of bias and stereotypes, and the psychological impact on those involved are crucial issues worth exploring further. Ultimately, the case remains a cautionary example of how complex and flawed the legal system can be and how important it is to protect the rights of victims and defendants.
Thank you for your time and interest in my video. If you liked it and would like to support my channel for free, I would appreciate your like. With your support, you help me grow my channel to reach more people. If you don't want to miss other videos, feel free to leave a follow and activate the bell when you want to be notified. Thanks again for your support, and see you soon.